Before we jump into this podcast, let's just have a first word from our sponsors, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world and an absolute essential travelling companion. You can use NordVPN on 10 devices with just one account, easily switching your virtual location to access apps and websites in other countries. But if you're out of the country, make sure that you've got NordVPN to be able to use your subscriptions and watch the live sport that you might miss. If you're at home, use it to see if you can save money with products that might be cheaper in another region. Go to nordvpn.com/Manchester to get 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. The link is also in the podcast description. Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. This is an edition of the Midweek Debate. My name is Steven Railston, as I'm sure you're probably aware, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, as usual, Tyrone Marshall, for today's episode. It's all about the Europa League at the moment with United, who play Bilbao on Thursday night. So this podcast is only going to probably be out for 24 hours before that game. So we're going to sink our teeth into that, talk a bit about European football and a specific quote from Ruben Amorim that was made 2 weeks ago. But we'll get onto that in a second. I'll begin by asking Tyrone Marshall how he is, because we do that on this podcast, don't we, Ty?
We do. It's a friendly podcast, Stephen. Yep, I'm good, thank you. That was a very egotistical intro as well. I'm Steven Railston. I'm sure you know who I am by now. I'm very unlike you, Stephen. When people in the office, when they hear you've been egotistical, people will be amazed.
I've got a haircut today, so I'm feeling myself. Maybe that's what it is.
You've got it. Yeah.
And the sun's out, so got a little bit of a tan going on. The end of the season, holiday coming up soon. Feeling quite happy, Ty. Feeling optimistic.
Oh, good. Let's hope you're still feeling optimistic on Friday morning.
You could do with some sun and a haircut as well, to be fair. So hopefully you get some time to improve your appearance as the summer comes in. Right, football. Less of the bad crack from us and the bad banter.
That was particularly bad banter.
Pretty crap, wasn't it? Yeah. We're going to talk about a quote, as I said, from Amorim 2 weeks ago in a press conference. He actually said it ahead of the Lyon game, the second leg at Old Trafford. And he said, if you look at this moment, we are not ready to be really competitive in the Premier League and cope with the Champions League. But if you play in one club, you should fight for this competition. I mean, that second bit doesn't really make too much sense without the rest. But he's essentially saying United aren't ready for the Champions League because of where they are, the squad they have. They will sign players this summer and things will change. Of course, to get into the Champions League, they need to win the Europa League because that will grant entry into that. What did you think about that quote? Because it's interesting, really, isn't it? I get what he's trying to say. However, for me, the pros of qualifying for the Champions League completely outstrip the negatives. I mean, players, commercial revenue, it all kind of rolls into one. And United simply need to be in European competition next season for me. And their only route is the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting at the time when he said it. And I remember, I don't think it really made much people's copy ahead of I think it was the Lyon second leg, wasn't it? And I remember him saying it in the press conference. I don't recall it making many headlines on the Thursday in previews and things like that. But I remember it being interesting because it was something I hadn't really considered, to be honest. I think we've all just thought they've got to win the Europa League to get in the Champions League. And it did kind of make me think, and it's made me think since, and I've considered writing a piece on it, but not really the right time. And if they win it, maybe there'll never be a right time now. But I thought it was interesting in that I think everyone is like, they've got to win this, they've got to win this, they've got to win this. And it was almost like Amorim saying, I've looked through the quotes, I thought he said more about it, to be honest, but I can't find it now, maybe in a different press conference. But it's almost like, you're absolutely right, they need the 100+ million. United should be in the Champions League. It will give them a wider pool of players. But at the same time, this team are miles from the Champions League. And one advantage it will have is that it'll give them 3 midweeks in training next week to make a big difference, to bed this system in. Yes, you've got to balance that with having better players. The Champions League will be huge to United's revenue and transfer budget, but they've still got the same sort of PSR concerns. And the example it made me think of was Chelsea under Antonio Conte when he won a title in his first season, pretty unexpectedly. And there is a difference there, in that they'd won the league 2 years previously. It had fallen apart under Mourinho, not because the squad weren't good enough, but because of other kind of issues, really. I think maybe the squad, wasn't of the standard you expect from league winners. And then it drifted and Mourinho got sacked that year. They finished 10th, didn't qualify for any European football. It kind of felt like Chelsea's era was over. and then Conte comes in, changes to a back three and wing backs, and don't have any midweek games because they're not in Europe, gets all that training time to implement this different system. Teams couldn't work it out, and they won the league with Victor Moses and Marcus Alonso at wing back. And a lot of that, I think, was that they had those free midweeks. I'm not saying that if
I
United don't
mean,
win the
very
Europa League, they're going to
underrated.
win the league.
Very
But
underrated wing backs, those, by the way. I thought in those roles, they were excellent in those specific
yeah,
roles.
yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, but it just made me think as that maybe it won't be the disaster we all kind of think it is if they don't win the Europa League.
Well, United fans aren't, let's say they progress through this tie against Bilbao in the next week and they go back to Bilbao for the final and they lose that game, whether that be against Tottenham or Bodo Glimt. I don't think United fans are going to return to Manchester on the flight and think, oh, well, we've got a few midweeks next season. That'll help. Well, that's the reality of it. I get your point because it's a fact. It will help and it would benefit next season having that extra time in training. Just look at Newcastle. I think they're a good example this season who struggled with Champions League, came out of the competition, didn't have Europe this season, and now they're back at the top of the Premier League again, currently in third. So it clearly is a huge, yeah, it's hugely helpful. But this is United here, and where they want to go, the players they want to sign, they have to be in Europe's premium competition, don't they? I mean, the financial figures were released for the last couple of months of 2024 recently. I've just got it up here. Broadcasting revenue declined by 42% to £61 million. And that's because United were in the Europa League, not in the Champions League. So, I mean, if they completely come out of all European competition, it's going to really damage the financial picture, which is already looking rather bleak.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Financially, it's huge. The financial picture is bleak. I guess a bit of that, there's the 25% wage cuts built into player contracts, which makes a bit of a difference. They wouldn't need to carry such a big squad next year if they weren't in Europe. But financially, there's no getting away from it. It's not just, like you say, it's not just Europa League to Champions League. It's nothing to Champions League. It's probably £100 million plus in revenues. But I guess the counter argument to that is how long will they be in the Champions League for? We've got to remember. I mean, when was the last time they did anything in the Champions League? It's probably 20 2018, 19, I think it was, wasn't it? The Mourinho Solskjaer season when Solskjaer had the
Barcelona.
win against
Yeah.
PSG. And, that was, I mean, the group stage, there was some decent moments in the group stage. I think they won in Juventus. The PSG game was obviously spectacular. They didn't lay a glove on Barcelona in the quarterfinals.
Messi was magnificent
Messi
again, wasn't he?
was
Across both
superb,
games.
yeah. And, beyond that, they've done nothing in the Champions League for years beyond that. And every time they get in it, they don't really look like doing anything different.
No,
So,
but it's more just attracting players, isn't it? Especially this summer. If United are in Europe, and there's already been murmurs of your favourite player, your favourite potential signing, Liam Delap, considering his options ahead of the summer, which any footballer would do, seeing which clubs are in which European competitions, it's just a no-brainer. If you're in the Champions League, you're going to be a more attractive proposition. And as well, you would have done it on the back of a trophy win. So if you can turn around and say, look, we're being crap, but we've still won a European trophy, which it's still blowing my mind that watching that game at Bournemouth at the weekend. And that team is probably quite likely not to have too many changes for Bilbao. The fact that that side could win a major European trophy is mental.
it's going to be incredibly humiliating for the rest of Europe if it's a United Tottenham final. I think we both sat here in January, February when the knockout stages were getting underway, and I remember pouring scorn on the fact that they even beat Real Sociedad, and here they are on the brink of a semi. Tottenham are in the semis,
Brink of a semi.
yeah, yeah, almost. Not at the moment, not sat with you, um, but and here they are both on the brink of a final now, and it's not a good look for the rest of Europe that the Premier League's 14th and 16th are they in the table, can be in this position, albeit both I think have got difficult semi-finals, and wouldn't surprise you yet if it was an Athletic Bodo Glimt final. But the other thing to mention about this whole, it's not a case of should they win it or should they not. Obviously, they should win it. Is there a silver lining to them not winning it?
Yeah.
And I guess you'd say, you use Newcastle as an example there, and United fans will rightly hate me using Newcastle as an example, but it's kind of relevant, I guess, given the state where this United squad is at. So they do win it. They get in the Champions League this year. They've got all those extra games. Yes, they improved the squad. How much they improved the squad by, I still don't think it's going to be astronomical improvement. So they get in the Champions League. It hurts them to a degree of a few points next season. and they miss out again the season after. Is that
But
beneficial to long-term planning, or would they get to a position where the Champions League regulars every season quicker if they don't qualify this year and he has a full season of training next year?
I don't think it would have a hugely detrimental effect because we just talked about on the last podcast their goal for next season. It's probably top 8, isn't it? Top 6 would be ideal, of course, but
Yeah.
top 7, top 6, obviously more European places now with the way it's working. Um, is that going to change whether they're in the Champions League or not? That goal, it's not really. And theoretically, you'd sign better players because you're in the Champions League, so it would be easier to finish in the top 7 or top 8.
Yeah, I guess it's not. The problem is, and it's almost like United have treated the Champions League like the hokey cokey in recent years. They're in and they're out. They're in and they're out. They're in and they're out. And if that happens again, it's just kind of like it's almost like they have these one-off seasons where they get in the Champions League, do absolutely nothing in it, and then they end up back in the Europa League or nothing. And they need to build to a position where they are top 4, top 5 again every season, rather than just having a successful season or having a season where they win the Europa League, getting into the Champions League, haven't got a good enough squad, make a mess of it, go out in the league phase, maybe go out in the playoff phase, and then the following season they're not in the Europa League. In a way, I think I know Amorim said on Friday everyone wants to play for Manchester United. I think there's a degree of that still, but not to the case there was a decade ago. I've said it countless times on this podcast. The young players you're targeting now, the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, haven't really got any memories of United winning the league, certainly not the Champions League. And when they're in for a season and do nothing, and then they're out, and then they're in and they do nothing, and they're out, I don't think that's particularly appealing to the elite level players that you're trying to attract. What looks better to them is that you're challenging top 4, top 5 every year in the Premier League. And look, in a way, I guess I don't.
Well,
I'm
we both,
debating for
yeah,
debating's sake here.
it's
It's obviously better they win it,
yeah.
but I can see where he's coming from. That there's maybe a silver lining if they don't win it, and it's not as disastrous as it might feel at the time.
I'm interviewing Luke later, which will be quite fun. But he's 18, obviously, well documented, and he was 5 years old when United last won the title,
Yeah,
which is incredible when you think about it. He's probably not got any memory of that at all, really,
no.
in 2013. Um, I mean, there's a big kind of debate, a little debate to be had around Ruben Amorim then, because we talked about if he doesn't win this trophy, the Europa League, he goes into next season, he's going to be backed in the transfer window. And if results continue to be bad and there's a bit of a sticky patch, let's say in the October international break, the pressure will start to build and the fingers will be pointed. If, however, he wins wins the Europa League, it just changes the feel, doesn't it, around the club? The fact that, yes, they've had a crap 6 months, but they've still won a trophy. And Amorim can point towards that and, well, I've delivered a European trophy in this rubbish season, back me. And the feeling is a lot better going into next season. The pressure isn't as intense and the scrutiny on those performances. So it's going to be hugely beneficial in a lot of ways, isn't it? If they do win the Europa League.
Yeah, it is. I feel like we're getting into a proper. I feel like I'm just debating you for the sake of the midweek debate now. Everything you say, I'm going to disagree with.
Well,
I
we're
guess
actually agreeing with each other, aren't we? That's
I
the
think we
thing.
probably do agree with
Yeah.
each other. We're just doing a really good job of making it look like we don't. The counter argument to that is that yes, they win it. They get into the Champions League. Next season is tricky, as we still think it will be. And not only are they maybe 8th, struggling a little bit in the Premier League, but they finish 16th in the league phase of the Champions League, say, because Amorim's right, and it is too soon for them. In a way, that looks worse on him than having a decent run in the Europa League this year and not getting into the Champions League. Because then it's the total, it's the kind of not the unknown, isn't it? But flopping in the Champions League next year won't be good for Amorim.
But
And yeah, you can say, "Well, I won the Europa League to
could
get here," but
could they actually flop? I mean, this United side could, but see if they win the Europa League and added a few quality players, Oshman, for example, a midfielder, a natural right wing back. You look at the extended Champions League table this year, 36 teams. I mean, some of the crap who finished outside the playoffs: Dynamo Zagreb, Stuttgart, Shakhtar Donetsk, Bologna, Sturm Graz, Sparta Prague. You get my point. There's these very Europa League feeling teams who are in the Champions League.
yeah, but look at their playoff round: Man City versus Real Madrid. Paris Saint-Germain were 45 minutes away from elimination against Manchester City, and they'd have gone out in the league phase, and now they're on the brink of a final. yeah, I think finishing outside the top 24 in the Champions League would clearly be almost impossible for Manchester United.
Yeah, I agree.
But finishing ninth to 24th, I think would be extremely likely. And anyway, I think you could easily, kind of in the luck of the draw a little bit, isn't it? But they could easily finish in the bottom half of that playoff round, get a difficult playoff draw, or even a reasonably standard playoff draw and go out in the playoffs. And it'd be up to people to judge then next season whether that's a success or not. It's very difficult to see them get to the quarterfinals or beyond in the Champions League. And I like I say, I
Well, the way
I do hope they win it and we get to
yeah,
see. But I can see where he's coming
the
from.
intelligent way to word it, as you've been doing, is well, the counter argument would be
Yeah, yeah, and
that
that's
implies you don't actually believe it, but we're talking about the
yeah.
nuances of it, aren't
And
we?
I don't think Amorim sat there going like, "Oh God, I hope we lose to Bilbao.
Yeah,
This would be a disaster if we got to the Champions League." It's more that, like I say, I'd not before he mentioned it against Leon, I'd not really considered that there was any
upside.
positives or silver linings to it, and it did kind of make me think again. And
But he probably doesn't believe it himself. He's just saying it
I don't
because
know.
there's a PR angle there, isn't
I
there?
think he
Clearly.
does
Mm.
believe it himself, and I think a lot of these modern coaches that are so training ground intensive about improving teams and improving players. It's I mean, what they play 8 games in the league phase, wouldn't they? You're looking at maybe an extra 20, I don't know,
But
20
you're
training
talking
sessions
about that
before
time. Has he
Christmas.
not had enough time, right? Because he's come in the middle of the season, which hasn't been ideal, obviously, and he didn't want to do that, but he was forced to. So he's had this block of time with players who a lot of them might not be here, and he'll sign his own players. And then in the summer, finally, he'll have a full preseason to get his message. Well, if his message isn't already across, to fully kind of drill it into them and work on things that he wants to. So he'll have a full preseason behind them. Why does he need this 3 midweeks to for that? It's more for the angle for me. That would be a positive because it's the time to rest and recover instead of the time to actually get his message to the players because that should be
Yeah, it,
it should
it
be
it should
installed
be
by
there
now.
now. But I mean, even if they
It's
don't
still
qualify for the Champions League, there will be new signings, won't there?
yeah.
I think that's inevitable that there's going to be new signings. There's going to be churn in that squad. They're going to sell. And they're going to sell the 3 forwards we talked about last week. They're going to bring new forwards in. There's going to be change at wing back. There's probably going to be change at midfield, whatever happens. So it's a chance to work with those players. The rest is a big thing. Not as big. I guess the biggest benefit is that whatever happens, they can't be in the Europa League next
The
season
biggest
because
benefit
that's the
is
biggest
Luke
season
Shaw
killer.
will be available for every game.
Yeah, and you can, yeah, you can also operate with a much smaller squad. They could sell more of those players without
Mhm.
replacing them. You could operate with a smaller squad. The rest is a fair point. I think the training, like I say, you go back to Conte and Chelsea. I think the training ground time made a huge, huge difference to that season and the success they had in that season. And I think certainly when a team is in kind of like its embryonic stage, I guess this United side is under Amorim, not being in Europe can be a significant advantage, I think. Um, so I can see, I think he probably does. I think he clearly wants to win the Europa League, wants to be in the
You'd hope
Champions
so.
League. You would hope so, yeah. Maybe we'll find out by his team selection in the second leg. Um, but yeah, I do think that I don't think he's saying this just for effect. I think he would see reasons that it's not the be all and end all.
United's build up to the Bilbao game. Obviously, they played Bournemouth last weekend. When I thought about the game in my head last few days, when I've about to write out the result of my articles, I've almost wrote out 1-0 loss to Bournemouth because that's almost kind of how it felt, I suppose. Fantastic to salvage a point in the end. Does the result really matter that much? It's inconsequential, isn't it, in terms of the league
Huge
position?
inconvenience for writing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I did think that. I mean, it's hugely important for Rasmus Højlund, and he looked very relieved to score that goal. And Luke Shaw kind of provided the assist. I know it came off Manuel Ugarte, didn't it? But he played the cross into the
Mhm.
box. And I thought it was worth touching on him briefly. I know we just did, because he started the game a left centre back in the free. He'd exclusively played in the back three under Aram so far. He obviously had a run of appearances from the bench in November time before picking up a fresh injury. But in the second half, when United were pushing to win the game, pushing to equalise after that red card, Shaw was moved to left wing back. And for me, he looks so much better. He had a really poor start of the game, but I thought he recovered after that and looked more dangerous. And I just think he has to start there on Thursday night, tomorrow night, at left wing back. I think I'd personally keep the same back five, but I'd tweak the positions, put Shaw at left wing back and Dorgu at right wing back with Mazraoui in the right side of the three. Because of what Shaw gives you in attacking scenarios, he is the best wing back in that dressing room for me when he's at his best because of what he's able to do in those attacking and defensive scenarios. And we've seen it for England in major tournaments, how brilliant he is, Roman forward. The Euro 2020 final, fantastic goal, wasn't it, against Italy? So would you agree with that assessment? Do you think you should start him? He should start him at left wing
Yeah.
back, or
I mean, I'm not sure if he did end the game at wing back, to be honest. It was so confusing. I mean, he was confused himself the amount of times he looked over to Amorim and asked where he was playing. It was almost like Amorim threw on a second striker and then no one had a clue what was going on. Like Amorim spent more time, like one moment, Shaw went to left wing back, then he appeared to come back to centre half, then Ugarte went into centre back, then Garnacho was like
well,
wing
at
back.
that point it is very fluid, isn't it?
It was
But
very
he
fluid.
was in
And
a lot
either
more
way,
advanced positions.
yeah, he was in advanced positions. And I think he might have still been nominally the left-sided centre back, but there was three centre backs for zero forwards at times, and he got forward really well. Even before the cross for the goal, he put in one really dangerous ball. His crossing's good. I don't think he'll play wing back purely because he played 90 minutes on Sunday, and that definitely wasn't in the plan. Um, I think to have played 75 minutes and 90 minutes in his first games back is not what United wanted at all. I mean, he wouldn't have come on against Leon at half time, but
I
for
think he's ready.
Mazraoui,
I mean, I'm not a medical scientist. I'm not on the club
I
coaching
just
medical
think
staff.
he's had so many muscle
Yeah,
problems
and, and
that
and I've actually criticised that playing him in quick succession, but it's the fact that he's been gradually brought along the last few weeks. He has been in the squad now for a few weeks. He's made appearances. He's got his first 90 minutes under his belt. Ideally, I mean, I've mentioned it. It's not ideal starting a player in quick succession on the back of a muscle injury, but if it's just this once, I don't think it's the end of the world. If he
yeah,
started again at the weekend and then he started again, then it would become a problem.
but
But
it might
surely he
be.
can do it once.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? I mean, it might be just this once, but he might tear his hamstring racing down the left wing in a wing back role. I don't think anyone would be surprised if that happened. And given the data medical teams at elite clubs have on players and fitness these days, like I said, the 75 minutes against Leon weren't planned because Mazraoui had to go home at half time. Lindelof was coming on, had to go home at half time. Shaw, gets 45 minutes he wasn't expecting, then gets half an hour. That took so much out of him. He wasn't in the squad at all against Wolves. Then he plays against Bournemouth and plays 90 minutes, which Amorim has said wasn't in the plan. I think he'll start purely because I don't really think there's anyone else. I can't. We're not at the squad,
But you'd
the
rather
travelling
have him in the
squad
back
confirmed
three.
yet. But I think he'll play in the back three rather than at wing
So is
back.
that predominantly on fitness concerns instead of kind of technical and
A
positional?
little bit, but I also think he can do a lot of what you get and a lot of what you're talking about from a kind of left centre back role. You don't play three centre backs to mark
It's the
one
crosses, isn't it?
defender.
They're absent. He's very good in build up play, and there's little passing triangles on the left
The
side of the
cross,
free.
the cross he put in before the goal came from kind of the position you'd expect a left centre back to move into, like from a slightly deeper area. Um, I still think he'll play Dorgu on the left and Mazraoui on the right. The interesting thing at training today was that those two, so when they start out and do the rondos, Dorgu and Mazraoui went separately to do their own thing. And United clarified it wasn't kind of fitness concerns, it was more like load management and things like that. But it did kind of give me the impression that maybe they're going to be the wing backs. The fact that they're doing different things, it's the most intensive role in the squad. I can see Dorgu and Mazraoui being wing backs and then not playing against Brentford. I think that's got a pretty decent chance. But I still think he'll play Shaw that left centre back role. And to be honest, I do think he's a good wing back. I also think he's a really good left sided centre back. And I think Amorim, like a lot of managers, would want a left footer, especially in a back three. So yeah, I think he'll stay there.
I mean, the team was interesting at the weekend, wasn't it? Because it felt like it would be very close to something that we're going to see tomorrow night against Bilbao. Maybe two changes maximum, I'm thinking, or maybe just one, to be
Couldn't remember
fair.
the team, to be honest. But
Um,
you
I mean,
got
I've got it up here. So you got it would potentially come in the
come in.
side and
I think
for
it'll be
Kobe
Ugarte
Mainoo.
and Casemiro.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking as well. Obviously, with Fernandez and Garnacho in the number 10
Yeah.
roles, and then the same back five that we just
Yeah.
talked about. We talked about Mainoo the other week, and I was kind of advocating for him to be dropped back into the pivot. Shout out to Mr. Luckhurst, Samuel Luckhurst, who loves the word pivot. In a deeper position, I just feel he's still got more to give, as I explained, and he was moved back there.
Mhm.
It's hard to really say anyone had a brilliant game against Bournemouth. I thought it was a pretty meh performance again, but there was sparks from Mainoo. I think in the first half he went on a little run down the left. ironically, in the kind of position he find himself in the number 10 role.
Yeah.
But what I think is brilliant and why I think he needs to play there is he's so good at facing his goalkeeper, picking up the ball and turning.
He's incredibly press resistant,
He's
isn't he?
just amazing at that, isn't he?
Yeah.
So that is so useful when you're trying to build up from the back.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I think he's got to play there going forward a bit more.
Yeah, I was pretty skeptical that it would happen, and then sure enough, it did happen a few days later. So,
Amram listens to the podcast and
I'll
listens to
give
me.
you finally
Thanks, Ruben.
chalked up a point there. I still don't know long term. I mean, it was quite. I tweeted like within the first minute, and I noticed in the warm up that Mainoo seemed to be, they do that kind of five-a-side box game in the warm up now, and Mainoo was deeper with Casemiro, and it looked like he was going to play that role, but it was so fluid at times that it was hard to tell exactly where he was. I thought he started all right and then got worse. To be honest, I thought there was a few sloppy passes. There was a moment in the second half where he kind of went in to tackle the ball, but just gave it away. It was a little bit half-hearted, maybe. And it was kind of right in front of us. And obviously, it's a small stadium at Bournemouth. We were right near the dugout. And you could hear Amorim just shout, "Copy!" And you could sense, like, and it came off a few minutes later. I don't think he came off for that. I think he came off because these were pre-planned subs, that triple change. But yeah, I don't know. I still get the feeling that Amorim is not entirely sure how best to use him
I
at
think
the
he needs a
moment.
a consistent run of games in that role, or if he's going to stick by the number 10 position, which I don't think is advisable, he needs just to be given, right, this is your position. You're going to play here for a month and a half, and we're
Yeah,
going to make a decision. Because when you mess players around and you tweak their position, as Mainoo has been in the last 2 months, I mean, playing up front, and then he's been playing on both sides actually of the number 10. He's been playing occasionally on the right, and then occasionally during the game, he'll get moved to the left position. It's just not good for finding your rhythm and for momentum, is it? It's much easier to kind of give the best account of yourself if you're in a settled role.
yeah. Well, I think his last three starts, or three of his last four starts now, have come in different positions, and versatility can be a benefit, but also when you kind of reach the age that Mainoo is now, it's a hindrance really. And I think the contract talks are still ongoing, and United still say they're confident. The fact is, they're clearly difficult talks. Otherwise, it would have been done and signed and sealed by now. And you wonder if now Mainoo is. I don't think there should have been an issue 12 months ago when these talks
I
were
mean, it's gone
starting.
on
But
for 14 months now. I mean, I was
yeah,
told in March last year, I was looking, it's almost May. So 14 months this
been a
has
long
been going
time,
on
and
for.
now it's a fresh kind of issue that he's probably saying, "Where's my future in this team? Where do you see me playing?" And it does feel like Amorim kind of needs to say, "This is what you are." And at the moment, it feels like he doesn't really know what he is. And I think he's unsure. Well, I know he's unsure about his defensive work because he said it in a press conference. I think he really likes his ability to operate. You mentioned that press resistance and operating in small spaces. That's a great attacking weapon as well.
But
As we saw against Leon, the shot he had against Bournemouth was quick feet again.
nobody in that squad right now can do what he does in that sense, where they can face Andre Onana, pick up the ball, maybe Christian Eriksen to be fair, but he's leaving on the expiry of his contract this summer. Pick up the ball, turn, be press resistant, and find the right pass. Casemiro's not that good at it. You got it. It's not his strength.
Definitely not a Garte
No,
strength. I
exactly.
think
So,
Casemiro's passing's decent.
but
Maybe he's
you
not
rarely
quite as
see him
good in
come and
small
show for
spaces.
it and turn and kind of you drop his
Yeah.
shoulder,
The
and
bigger issue is
he's
that
too old for that as well.
I wouldn't play Mainoo in that position now for that because the rest of them can't play out from the back. It is amateur hour when those lot try and play out from the back. It really is.
But if that's their long term kind of approach and what he wants to do and
Yeah,
how he sees them playing,
it
then,
ain't going to work with these players.
well, that's why
Basically,
they
I
need to
mean,
sign some new players in the summer.
you every game 5 minutes in, Amorim's going to Onana like that. Not very good for an audio format, but basically pointing, just go long. And you saw it again, like 5 minutes in against Bournemouth. He's like, Andre, like, boot it.
A lot of impressions of Amram to do.
Yeah, there is quite a few. Isn't
Andre,
there?
Andre.
Yeah. I have to work on my Portuguese.
Obrigado.
And then obviously they play out from the back from that free kick. And I mean, that was embarrassing. That was like amateur teams don't concede goals like that.
It was
And
like
Nana
kid
comes
stuff,
out to
wasn't
take
it?
that
Yeah.
free kick and scoffs a pass backwards to his centre half, who's 5 yards from him. Gives Sean no option but to go to Dorgu. By this point, everyone in that Bournemouth team knows where it's going and can just press Dorgu. Like there's no the way the ball was played, the fact it was bobbling, the body position of players. It was obvious what was going to happen.
What frustrates me about that is someone takes some bloody responsibility. It went to 3 different players. And all 3 of them made the wrong choice, really. They're all kind of accountable
Yeah,
in some sense.
I mean, I
At
think
one point, you just have to go along.
yeah, I think it starts with Onana, and that Onana plays a really bad ball to short. It's a simple ball, and it only really gave Shaw the one option. Well, maybe the two options, like you launch
But
it
it's
or you go to Dorgu. And then when you go to Dorgu, like I say, but by that point, it was from the body position of the players, it was so obvious where it was going to go that before Shaw's played that pass, Bournemouth are moving in for the kill to
yeah.
press. And that's why, like, you see them very occasionally play out from the back. They'll get it wrong a couple of times, and Amorim will just do that whole Andre point, and it goes long again.
We'll stick with Onana then, because I actually thought back to David De Gea yesterday against Sevilla, April 2023, 2 years ago. How is that 2 years ago, by the way?
Yeah.
It's flown by, hasn't it?
That's
It really has. De Gea had a really, really bad game in Spain that night. For me, he was mostly at fault for that pass, if fans remember, to Harry Maguire, because he could see the whole pitch. The
yeah.
pass wasn't on. He still made it. Maguire obviously played a role, and Sevilla scored within 10 minutes. And then the third goal as well. Can you remember how bad that mistake was when Sevilla punted it forward? De Gea came for the ball, seemed to forget how to use his legs and mishit it. It was really embarrassing. There was a lot of pressure, conversations about De Gea's future at that time, about whether he should be given a new contract. He was obviously let go. There is kind of a similar discussion around Andre Onana. Again, going into a knockout tie in the Europa League with pressure around United's goalkeeper. We've kind of said in this podcast continually that the can should probably be kicked down the road with him.
Yeah.
But I feel like these next few weeks could decide his future, because if he messes up like De Gea did at the business end of the season, De Gea made that error in the FA Cup final as well, then you think the writing would probably be on the wall and it would be a priority instead of something that's down the list.
Yeah, well, maybe the shades of De Gea, because I think around the time of that Sevilla game and probably building up to that, Ten Hag was of the view that you could kick the can down the road and that he would stick with De Gea. And then the season ends so badly for De Gea, makes a mistake in the cup final, and it just changes Ten Hag's mind. And De Gea's gone, and in comes Onana. So maybe there's kind of elements of that here. Again, I think the can will be kicked down
It
the road
feels
here,
like he
but
just doesn't have to. If he doesn't make a mistake, it feels like some high profile errors in the running. It feels like he'd be the
yeah.
number one,
I
won't
mean, the biggest issue is that when he came, his super strength and what we were told his super strength is his playing out from the back. And I know, United haven't really got the structures and the players to do it a lot of the time, but we just haven't really seen any of it. Like, you don't see him being comfortable in possession when that's what he's supposed to do. And he's made some incredible saves this season. There's no doubt about it. But there's also been way too many mistakes. But he's going to have to perform in these two semi-finals for sure, because I think Athletic are certainly favourites to win this tie, and I think if United to get through, Onana's going to have two pretty big games.
I mean, that team, yeah, completely agree with Onana. I saw some quotes from Valverde today as well, which was interesting. We'll talk about those. Lost my mind there. I was thinking where we were. And he said about set
At
pieces.
work, Stephen.
Yeah, I
At
know.
work.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. I was daydreaming. And he said Højlund, Maguire, and the Ligt are the biggest threats from set pieces. Bilbao need to be careful, really. What was interesting, because I think they've only scored 15 goals between them this season. Not exactly a massive goal for Alba.
No, they're not. No, I wouldn't. Is Højlund a threat from set pieces?
No, I
Doesn't
don't
really
think
feel
so.
like he is, to be honest. Certainly Maguire is, and certainly De Ligt is.
Yeah.
United were going for um, certainly when Ten Hag at the start of the season, United were aiming for De Ligt from every corner. It felt like, and he was getting shots away pretty regularly and getting headers away pretty regularly. Again, I don't think he'll start. We'll probably find out more, A, if he's in the squad, and B, from Amorim's press conference. Maguire's the obvious one. They're going to aim, Maguire's the big threat from corners. He's the big threat from open play.
He's just a big
He's
threat
just the big
altogether,
threat
isn't
all
he?
around, isn't he?
It is interesting that when he's come on, I mean, he came on against Nottingham Forest up front, and obviously scores against Leon. It's this kind of trend in recent years when you've seen goalkeeper coaches, Lee Grant, for example, become striker coaches. He's a
Yeah.
striker coach at Ipswich. It's having that understanding of how the position that you're up against works so deeply. So Maguire's against strikers all the time. He knows their movement. When you watch him, his movement's actually really good.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hadn't
I
thought
mean,
that,
I'm
to
not
be
going to
honest.
say he's going to be a permanent
No.
relocation, but that kind of puts Højlund to shame sometimes when we've talked about Højlund. And
Yeah. Højlund's movement's not
yeah,
great.
I mean, Maguire, when he came on at the City ground against Nottingham Forest, his kind of intelligence and the runs he was doing in the box, you could see his eyes. He was looking at the defenders and kind of going behind into their blind spots. I thought he was really clever.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I hadn't thought of that. I think it's probably more to the fact that Maguire knows when anyone gets the ball, they're going to launch it towards him, and he's probably got a good idea of where that ball's going to go. I guess for Hoyland during open play, it's a bit different in that United aren't launching balls into the box. He's got to make different runs, if you know what I mean. Maguire's not making a run
His movement's not a
to.
strength, though, is it, Highland?
No, it's not.
It's
But
definitely not.
Maguire's not got to make a run as a centre forward to hold the ball up or bring a number 10 into play or think, how can I get Garnacho into this game? He's got to make a run somewhere around the 6-yard box where he thinks the cross is going to go. And that's probably a lot easier than doing what Hoyland has to do for 89 minutes. And Maguire's great strength is his aerial prowess, isn't it? You stick a ball to him near him in the box, and he's going to have a pretty good chance of winning it.
The Ligt scored a few, hasn't he, this season? Is it 3, maybe?
Yeah, not entirely
But I
sure.
don't particularly look at him and think he's a huge threat. I mean, he's a big lad. He puts himself about in the box, bit of a cliche, that. Should we touch briefly before we end? Because we haven't had a huge amount of talk today. Come on, let's talk about Ligt a bit more. Because me and you, when we looked at the signings and we discussed the transfer window, we actually praised him and said he'd been a better signing than a bad signing. People's opinions have changed on him this season. I think he's kind of split opinion as a player. But he has had a pretty good season now, hasn't he? Now we're
Yeah, yeah.
towards the end of it. I think we can confidently say he's had a decent first year.
Yeah, I think so. Given the pressure he was under, I guess, when he came in as another Ten Hag, Dutch former Ajax player signing, the fact that things hadn't worked for him at Juventus and Bayern Munich, there's no getting away from that. Juventus and Bayern Munich don't sell you at a loss after a couple of years if things are going well. And, he wasn't disastrous for either club, but he also didn't live up to what either club expected, which is why they sold him for a loss. And then he had that nightmare international break in September with the Netherlands. So you add all that together, and I think he's had a pretty good season, a change of manager, what he signed on for, and a reunion with the manager who made him Ajax captain at 19 comes to an end pretty quickly. I think he's had a perfectly solid season, a good season. I think,
As good as he could have in a team that struggled
yeah,
and
given
falling from the
everything
Premier
that's
League.
happened, I think
But on an individual basis, he's been pretty fine, hasn't he?
he's
Yeah.
been pretty fine. I don't think there's been loads of mistakes. I think he can get better. But given how maybe it could have gone for him, and maybe the pressure he was under at the start of the season, I think you'd have to say it's been reasonably good. Yeah.
I asked him when he came out the mix zone after that game against Nottingham Forest because he was limping. I asked him if he was okay. He said he was fine, but he was clearly lying because he's not played since then. Thank God he's back in training. Don't know why I said thank God. It's not that important, is it?
You got the slaps on the head
the
today.
save, yeah. Valverde is correct from set pieces tomorrow night. United obviously fly to the Basque Country later on. We're recording on Wednesday. Ty, I've seen some suggestions that it is an advantage to play the second leg at Old Trafford. I'd be inclined to agree, especially when you look back at the games they've played in the last couple of years where they've went out to abroad and to European countries in the second leg and they've collapsed under such a really raucous, atmospheric crowd.
Yeah, and I think playing the three knockout ties in home with a second leg at home, Sociedad, Leon, and Athletic is going to be. It's been an advantage against Leon, and it was an advantage against Real Sociedad. It should be an advantage against Athletic. I think Thursday night they've just got to stay in the tie. I think I might have been talking to Samuel about from Bournemouth. Not sure who it was, but I did say to someone, you can. It's perfectly within the realms of possibility that this United side lose 3-0 tomorrow, and the tie's all but over because
It's
I think it's
interesting,
going to be
isn't it?
really difficult. I think the crowd, the atmosphere tomorrow, the quality of Athletic, the fact that they've had 8 days off. I think they are going to really go for it tomorrow.
All logic suggests, I mean, they should breeze through. And United are 14th, Bilbao are 4th. They've got the best defensive record in the league. I think
Yeah.
26 goals have conceded. They've got some really decent players. Obviously, Williams and Naki Williams is probably the star there. But I think a few midfielders who, when people watch tomorrow night, including myself, who have not had a chance, but you'll realise how technically good they are,
Yeah.
as usual, Spanish technicians. So everything just points towards a Bilbao win, but it's just not as simple as that, is it? It was, especially on the back of that Leon game, it feels like there could be something just special brewing or
Yeah, I mean, I think Athletic are favourites, but I'd say only 60-40, to be honest. Like you say, they are fourth. They're a pretty comfortable fourth in the league. I think that feels like they're definitely going to be in the Champions League next year. Whatever happens, I think the motivation of reaching a final at home, I mean, it's arguably bigger than United's motivation of getting into the Champions League. I think because they'll never get this opportunity again. The final in the lifetime of the era of this playing squad, probably the lifetime of those fans is not going to be at that stadium again. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for them. to reach the European final on home soil. I think the motivation for that is massive. I think they will see their best chance as being to really make Thursday night just really intense, really loud, really horrible, and try and play on the frailties of this United team. But as much as I think Athletic are favourites, I think it's only 60-40. You know, if you tell me United, if I go to sleep tonight and wake up 9 days later, A, I'll feel refreshed, and B, if I woke up and you told me United got through, I wouldn't be surprised.
Nobody
I
would be
don't think it'd be a
shocked, would
shock.
they? No.
No.
We'll leave it there then, should we?
Sounds
For
good
this
to me.
podcast. Yeah, thanks very much, Ty.
Thank you, Stephen.
And thanks, listeners, as usual. Leave us a comment on YouTube, like and subscribe on your audio platforms as well. Let's hope they win tomorrow night. Have a great week.